Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil, and this is my co-host Corey. And tonight we are talking about the Freemasons. What are we going to talk about with the Freemasons, Corey?
Well, what don't we talk about with the Freemasons?
I don't know.
There's so much. There's nothing to talk about, really. They're just a friendly guild of stonecutters. That's it. Yeah, there we go. Podcast over. Right? Nothing suspicious here.
There's nothing weird. Nothing going on.
Nothing weird. Can I talk?
You can. Are they letting you talk? Yeah. So this is part one. Part one of a two-part series.
So this may be a complete disaster, folks.
It may be. Who knows?
Part one is us talking about Freemasons.
That's right.
Part two is a special guest who may have more insight than,
since he is a Freemason. Yeah.
Or she.
It's definitely not a she.
Fair enough.
But yes, this individual is
secrecy already fails.
And though we will be keeping his identity private, probably for reasonable reasons, but he will answer our questions mostly, unless there are things that he deems too secretive.
And that's something, folks, by the way, if you're
fair.
interested, shoot us in the comments or at info.orderedchaos.ca.
Yes.
If you have questions you'd like us to ask our guest next week.
Absolutely. And I think this is, from his perspective, is education of what they do. And
it's not an expose. This is not an expose. Actually, I think he'll be dispelling some of the garbage we'll be talking about tonight.
Absolutely,
because this is internet research, folks.
That's right.
Yeah.
Depending how well we do, we may not have a part two. I don't want to be involved with these people, but yeah, it's pretty unique because you don't really see Freemasons being able to do these things. So the very fact that he's willing to. And I don't think he's going to be sharing any of his deep right stuff, like the cult, like the culture.
The cult. You were going to say cult, weren't you?
No,
I meant to say ritual, but you're going to say cult.
The ritual. That's what I meant.
Yeah, you were going to say cult. You did this.
Please forgive me, Freemason, who will be joining
cults. The sacrifices to
a group of people that are, of a shared perspective. I don't know. But yeah, no, he's going to help dispel some things, but we're going to get into some of the juicy stuff, right? I mean,
we're covering the garbage. Yeah, we're covering the garbage tonight.
We're covering all the crap because there's a lot of crap. So yeah,
it's a lot of interesting stuff.
It is fun. And even as I've just discussed this with Freemasons and they're like, oh, it's always fun to listen to what it keeps us interesting. Is usually their take on things. Except for, there are a few that are, maybe not savvy to them, but
it's in pop culture all over the place. So really, you have to live in a cave.
Who are they? Who are these?
So the Freemasons,
stonecutters.
That's right. Just a simple guild of stone. Okay, so the background. Freemasons originally were more or less just a guild.
Sure.
Okay, this is about 14th century. You had the concept of the Operative Freemasons Guild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Operative Freemasons mean you actually were a Mason. So you worked with your hands, you did it. And the principle behind it was pretty cool because most of these people, first off, tended not to be literate.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't write, couldn't read.
Mm-hmm.
And their work, unlike a lot of the other guilds, once they were done building that castle wall or fixing it,
get the fuck out of there.
Why stay? Like you're sticking right,
that's right.
Working with stone is expensive. It can take a couple of years, but once you're done, done and moving on. As opposed to the baker or the sewer, the tailor's guild or whatever, right?
Yeah. And they didn't want to get screwed, and so it was basically like your first union.
That's what the guilds were kind of like that, right? To keep prices at an agreed upon price and to make sure that this is what your work was worth, and you could go to an area.
Yeah.
And
if you were a member, that meant that you were somebody within that group has went and assessed your skill level and said, hey, he's a good guy. He's part of our group. And, this is what you're going to have to pay him in fairness. And don't fuck with them, because if you mess with one, you mess with all of them.
And they got hammers.
That's right. And pieces of rock. A lot of rock,
I guess. And
I thought that was really interesting because I didn't know that. I mean, I kind of did, but I didn't. When I
Thought it was
started,
more like a clever name that the Masons themselves.
no,
Like
I knew
that.
that Masons, Masonic, but at the same time, I didn't really see it as like, I'm like, okay, well, how did they start? And as I started to read, I'm like, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense
The Middle
because they
Ages were
were,
full of those guilds.
yeah, like, well, but especially with them because, like you said, they would work on a project and then, hey, we're out of here.
Move on.
Yeah, well, you didn't have a choice.
Well, because you had no work, right? You had a skill,
Yeah.
a unique. You had a like Liam Neeson. You had a very particular set of skills.
I have a very particular set of skills.
Yeah, I'm threatened. I feel dangerous.
Dangerous, isn't it? One of them is macrame.
Macrame.
Origami. Anyway, yeah.
Just paper folding for those who don't know what
paper
is.
folding, macrame.
But you would have to move on, right? So you and this guild structure, and also they can identify each other. So some of the less esoteric rituals, the handshakes, the like the code, like codes.
Well, like you said, they couldn't read or write.
Had to be simple. How do I know you're a Mason?
Yeah, this
I
is
can't
our
read
secret.
your mark.
That's right. This is our secret code. And I mean, there are numerous handshakes, apparently. And maybe we can ask our guest that about.
I have a diagram of a bunch of them, and we'll get into that once we start getting into what.
Where did you get a diagram? I don't want to know.
I don't know how.
I don't know
how honest it is, but it was so.
He may laugh at you. I don't know.
So this is 14th. This is 14th century. So Middle Ages.
Yeah.
The whole concept of the operative Freemason, somebody who actually is a Mason as a profession. In the 18th century, you have what's called speculative.
That's right.
Speculative. And you want to touch up on that one, Phil, where it's the
it's
cool kids?
Because I mean, the trade itself had changed, right? Everything had sort of changed, but they wanted to keep their group together. And they were like, okay, well, we can take members, as long as you're an upstanding individual and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that was kind of what I gathered from it. And that's where they allowed members who were not Masons, like actual physical skilled Masons, right? So I could go and, as long as I followed now they did have some rules, and some of them were pretty,
The big one was a belief in a supreme being, which was actually kind of restrictive, but also really egalitarian at the time. It didn't say which one.
No. And now there is also two other rules that kind of follow suit, and which is while in the lodge, while together as a group of Masons, you do not talk about politics and you do not talk about religion.
You can have beliefs on those, but you do not discuss them because that is not the business of the lodge.
And I think, having religion back in those times, I mean, I think they made sense when I read about why they wanted religion. And it was mostly because, hey, if you have faith in something greater than yourself, you tend to be a better person.
Which I always found a bit of a misnomer, right? The way they talked about that was they said you need this faith in a greater
something
cause,
other than yourself,
right? Because by doing that, it is going to ensure that you're more likely to be a moral individual. Yeah,
which I mean, look at our Catholic priests. Anyway, I digress. But those were some of the things. No women out.
And that's a product of the times, right? It was a boys club.
An all boys club. Now, I did read though that there were exceptions. If the wife of a Mason back at years before, she could take up his trade if he died. I did read this. It was very interesting, very rare. But she could become part. I don't know how deep into the Masonic she could go. But it was so she could carry on a livelihood for her family.
So this is when we're talking about operative Freemasons.
This is before,
right?
before
the speculative. Yeah, because the speculative one they didn't really have. I don't see them having that. No. The operative one I could see, and
like look at you need to feed your 9 kids, and you help. A lot of times, the whole family was part of this
because she had to be. You're moving around, so everybody needs to pull their weight.
Helping. Yeah, you know what? Eat your gruel in the morning and. We're working.
Go lift your rocks in the afternoon.
And lift your rocks and breathe in your stone dust for the rest of the day. But so if he died or had a mishap, then she could continue on in his stead
and still be a member of the guild, therefore still be a Freemason.
Right. So she could make a living, which I mean I think is a pretty noble thing. I mean
the irony of a Freemason being part of a guild is like the whole thing, you think of a Freemason meaning I'm free. No, you're not. You're actually part of a guild.
Yeah. Well,
right.
they called it Freemason because what was it? There was a stone of the free. There was a type of stone. Maybe we can ask the. Anyway,
I could see some noble lords, for example, requiring people to work for them and say, "Hey, you're my guy. I have walls. I need you to go around and make sure they're not falling down." I could see that. Sure. I'm just curious where the term. I couldn't find the term why it called Freemason.
It had something to do, and I did scan through it, and I'll put it up on the billboard here, our platform. But it had to do with the type of stone they used, I think, too. Anyway,
really? Okay.
Yeah, it was something to do with that. So it was like the most common type, stone that was being used, or something to that effect. I could be wrong. I have been before.
Well, this will be something we can dig up and find out.
For sure. Yeah. And, but then it really did change a lot, right? Like you said, and it was what, 1800s, right?
Yeah. The 18th century.
Yeah. The 18th century.
I think would have been like, I don't know if it's like the first century was up to 100, I think. And then, so 18th century was like between 17 and 18.
Yeah.
And 18, I think, so I just say 18th century.
Yeah. 18th century. That makes sense. Yeah.
And that's where you
one behind.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, because, up until Jesus, right?
Right. Well, yeah.
Everything was, forget that.
Yeah. We got to move on with it.
It's going to be 0 century.
Yeah. Now, what I didn't know was there were two types of, so this period, this 18, like when everything kind of changed, we also got two types of Masonic lodges, right? You had the regular Freemasonry, and then you had this continental Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Right. What was the difference?
So the big difference I saw was that regular Freemasonry played by all the rules of that they had been laid down for the rights, for whatever you want to call it, the orders of the orders and whatnot. Continental, anything goes. So continental,
okay.
They dropped stuff they didn't like. So if you want out it goes. Hey, wait, we want to get rid of the supreme being belief. Okay,
right,
done. We want atheists.
Right. I did read that. Yeah. Well, yeah, women could join.
Yeah, they could join depending on. So the Continental Freemasonry was not a single unified movement. It was basically Freemasonry on the continent, which I think was.
It was Europe, right? It was France. It was.
I always want to say Europe, but I sometimes think, because again, we're talking 18th century here. North America was a thing. Now we were still kind of.
Yeah, I don't. Right? Well, no, there was most definitely Masonic law. I mean, you had. What, 7 of the.
Well, when we touch on, I got a bunch of lists of famous Freemasons, right? And you look at that, it's a who's who.
There's a lot. Yeah. So, and this is, I think, what fuels the conspiracies, right? It fuels the, presidents and the who's of industry and
Paul Revere was a Freemason. Therefore,
all donkeys are owned by the Masons.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I think he was was he a silversmith? Paul Revere was a silversmith. Was he? But it's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
The idea that, well, he was a Freemason, therefore the Freemasons control the government.
Well, obviously.
Because he was part of the American Revolution.
Obviously.
He had a life. He also ate oatmeal. So some of this logic.
He was a Quaker.
He was a Quaker. Was he?
Those damn Quakers taking over the world.
Damn you, Wilford Brimley.
I got the diabetes. Wilford Brimley.
Yeah. And the continental stuff was fascinating, but it was a bit of a sort of like, I kind of look at it like the Catholic and Protestant.
Does it still
exist? Like a split?
I think it does.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I'm sure you got the harder core back in Scotland.
Yeah,
which seemed to be the origins of
it. Is that where it started? I mean, the Scottish Rite is a That's where like Masons can excel at certain things, right? Like are progress to different levels, and so there's 3 types.
Yeah.
Right. So we have the newcomer, right? Like the apprentice, they call it. Then they have, if you make it past that, because they can give you the boot, right? If they don't like you, you came in nice, and then all of a sudden they find out you're like some kind of chronic masturbator or something weird. Like, oh, nope, You're out. And the guy that said you should come in, he's out too.
I suspect that's probably not one of the criteria, but who knows?
Right. Then there's a journeyman, and then of course Master Mason.
Which kind of goes the same way if you look at your apprenticing.
Yeah,
the tradecraft, right? You're an apprentice, you're a journeyman, and then you're the master, meaning you can now have apprentices, sort of.
Right. Yeah, like electricians, you see that. You see, master electrician, master carpenter, master.
And I think the master, I think in the case of the word, I actually looked at being an electrician at one point, and to be a master basically meant you ran your own business.
Is that what it is? I don't know.
That's like because you stayed a journeyman until you actually run your own. Like once you set up your own business,
your own company. Yeah,
that's right. And then now you can apply or something to be a master. I'm not sure exactly what the criteria is, but
yeah, a good friend of mine's a master electrician, and he does own his own company, and he's very good at what he does. And but once again, it comes with time. Everything comes with time, knowledge, and that's what these guys. I think there's. And I don't know for sure. Nobody really does. Maybe our guest will shed some light on that as to, what is the transition to these things,
Yeah, and I've heard like the 33rd degree, which again,
that's for the Scottish Rite. So I did some reading. So the Scottish Rite has 33 degrees, 33 degrees of separation. I heard. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Kevin Bacon, 7 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon.
Oh, yeah, but 33 is even better. Yeah. So then the cool thing is they kept a written history. Did you know that?
Yep.
From the 1400s. So there's
okay. So it's yes, they did, but it's also very like any of our written histories.
Well, I don't know because most people don't get to view it. Obviously, I guess I don't know.
Just for what I was seeing on the interwebs when I was doing my research, they were going on about they're trying to do the continuity back to. So that's why we're able to get back to the 14th century is there's some continuity, but yeah, there's not necessarily as much details as we would perhaps like, but there's like any of these historical documents, any documents recorded in history.
Oh yeah.
Stuff to get missing. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you're doing like, even when you have to do like notes, when you work at a job that requires reporting, you get lazy. It's Friday. I noticed when I used to have to do my reports or serious occurrences or whatever, if I was really close to going home, those tended to be really short.
So we just finished an audit week at work, and I learned a valuable lesson after day 2. Don't write policy in the afternoon. Anything that you think is going to be policy orientated, write in the morning, because by the afternoon, I mean, I could get away with whatever I wanted. Craziness to put down because people just want to get out of the Teams call.
Oh, right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So where do we go from here? We got 18th century. We can take anybody we want, basically, other than
So let's touch on some of the unless you're continental. If you're continental, maybe you do, maybe you don't.
We do, yeah.
So this is where you hit in with your traditional. Hey, Corey, did you know the Shriners are Masons?
I told you that. I
know. I did not know that.
It's a very high level of a Mason told me that. I didn't really know that I just was always like, so what's the highest level of Mason? And they're like, well, Shriners are sort of like the upper echelon of.
I had stumbled over it a couple times, and where does it show? The Shriners, known formerly as the Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, is the charity organization best known in the popular line for driving hospitals. Tiny little cars in parades.
Yeah,
they're an offshoot.
Hospitals.
Yep.
They run 22. You had
they run 22 children's hospitals.
I know, and they run them free of charge.
Yep.
These fucking guys are amazing, right? And that's why you go, they do all this stuff for kids, and people, right? But yeah, you had to be a Mason to become a Shriner to get to that level. But there's a whole bunch of offshoots, right? So and this is the same as the 33rd Rite, the Scottish Rite. That's another. You don't have to do it, but if you want to better yourself as what did my wife say? She said it sounds like Scientology.
Because it's secret society-ish, right? I mean, Scientology is quasi-religion /
get into different levels. She's like, do they have to pay for their levels? I'm like, I don't know. I mean,
That's a
maybe.
question to ask our
Yeah.
Mason friend next week.
I know that, I mean, generally speaking, I would assume, like, how else are the, there's charity events, but you don't hear like, hey, it's the Mason car wash down there on Third Street. That doesn't happen. So, I think a lot of the generated revenues comes from the members. Wow.
True, and I suspect there's something about. So
Know.
you were in martial arts, I was in martial arts,
Yeah.
and often you had to. It wasn't just, hey, I want to go get my next belt. It's like, okay, it's going to cost. You have to pay to take the exam to do your next belt.
Oh yeah, none of mine did that, but I mean, I've heard that's not uncommon.
That's not uncommon. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
not surprising. I never went particularly far. I'm too much of a dilettante when it comes to it.
A dilettante.
I would go off and learn jujitsu, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm lost all interest in this thing. I learned some cool stuff and moving on.
And move on. Yeah. No, and but this, I don't know. And I'm curious to ask actually, is there a monetary fee, like a sort of
they must have to pay something, whether it's a membership due.
There must be.
Or
because they have a Masonic lodge. So they have a lodge
mm-hmm.
that I mean are generally pretty. I know North Bay has, I think they have two.
The Kiwanis Club, like, aren't there a couple?
Kiwanis is not.
Yeah, but this is where we're talking about. Like, I wonder if we did like linkages to say, okay, this organization here, like so Knights of Columbus.
Yeah. Now that one, I knew a guy who was a Knight of Columbus, which, I believe is Catholicism. You have to be a practicing Catholic or whatever Columbus was. But yeah, then you have Kiwanis, you have Rotary, you have the Lions Club. So these are all kind of, groups that help and do charities and good things. But none of them are as secretive as the Masons, right?
True, because I don't think they have the same rights. So a lot of the thing about the Mason, when we talk about Masons, not so much the operative Masons. Operative Masons were more of the actual Masons, right?
Yeah, they were career guys.
This was your job. Once you became speculative Masons, you started to see the whole idea of layering of ritual and belief systems. So the whole idea that you are going off and bettering yourself. Yeah, like that's the temple you're building, right? You're not building the Temple of Solomon. You're building yourself.
And it's funny you say that because every time, I mean, I've known several. I mean, there's like 6 million of these guys probably across the planet, right? Like they're all over the place. But I've had the pleasure of knowing, a few, and they're generally super upstanding guys. They're always, career guys. They have good jobs. They, they have families. They do everything right, So you have to go, oh fuck, maybe it's true. Maybe it does make you a better person. Hard to say. Right.
That is one of the tenets of Freemasonry is making yourself a better person.
For sure. And why not? And there's camaraderie too. And a lot of people like that. Look at fucking biker gangs. I know I hate to say this, but you know what?
I think we'd be likening biker gangs and Freemasons together, but here we are.
But you know what? Biker gangs do a lot of charity. And I'm not just talking
the ones that aren't outright. I was gonna say the ones that aren't outright criminal organizations.
No,
the ones where it's like they're collections of they're biker gangs, but they're not a criminal organization in the sense of what we think of a biker gang.
I know some guys that are. I mean, in my business, I deal with all sorts of folks, and some of the nicest guys, pull up on a Harley, wearing a patch, and they're
most won't let me drive a motorcycle. I asked.
Yeah, it's a little.
She was like, you're gonna die. I'm like, I'm insured.
Yeah, I rode for a while, but no, but here's the thing, and we always had a friend of mine who's part of a motorcycle club. He always comes and asks for sponsorship for different things they do for kids, and they're always doing these like poker runs or things for children, and they donate a fucking ton of money and their time, but yet
and probably sell a lot of weed.
Well, I don't
know anymore. I guess it's legal now. So I know a lot of
it's pretty legal. I mean, you don't.
Yeah. Apparently the rates. Apparently it's cheaper to buy from your guy than it is to go and buy from the province.
And I think that's a Wednesday rant, probably.
A Wednesday rant, yeah.
Fuck, what a joke. Anyway, yeah, okay. but yes, am I comparing? They're very different organizations, but they're also quite secretive about what they do in their club, right? They help people. They look different, but does that make their purpose any different? I don't know. We'll have to ask our guests.
We'll have to ask our guests. Yeah, if you were to compare yourself to an organized crime organization, would you say you're A, closer to an outlaw banker gang, B, the mob, C, the Yakuza,
I did not say
or D, triads,
gang,
or whatever M13 is? What's the one M13? The Mexican MS, yeah, or MS13. Which one would you say you're closest to? Your organization maps closest to from?
That's a bad one.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm not saying Bloods and Crips and Masons.
So we talk about secrecy. Mm-hmm. So this is where they're the original folks that have the whole secret handshake.
I love it.
Right. And they call it a grip or a token. Apparently that's the term used to describe it's a grip or a token. Yeah. And there are a couple different ones and you can use. So there's the handshakes themselves. And so for example, apparently to show that you're an entered apprentice, you would do something like this.
How are you going to do this with two?
You wouldn't do, you do this yourself. You would sort of introduce yourself, say, hey, hi. Like this is how you would tell someone you're an okay.
You come up to them and go, hey.
Once you've identified. So once they've identified each other, this is how you would say, like, this is, yeah, it's, what is it? My left hand supporting the Bible, my right hand resting thereon. So left hand. Supporting. So yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Right. So, and then there's another one where you're like, I don't know. Oh, another one where you're up at your neck. Yeah.
Okay.
And the entered apprentice actually, so the grip of the entered apprentice is made by pressing the thumb against the top of the first knuckle joint of the fellow Mason. The fellow Mason also presses his thumb against the first Mason's knuckle.
Wow.
The name of this grip is bows. When a candidate is imparted with this grip, its use is done in this manner. First, the worshipful master says to the candidate, I now present my right hand in token of friendship and brotherly love and will invest you with the grip and word. As you are uninstructed, he who has hitherto answered for you will do so at this time. Here, Hithro. Yeah, Hithro. Yeah, so, and that's how they show them the grip, right? And this is the whole secret handshakes, which I suspect that's part of the whole rising and ranks.
With someone, you go, what the fuck are you doing? Maybe that's a Mason.
Yeah, it's like this.
Where they grab your fucking fingers. Those guys. If you're out there listening, don't grab someone's fingers when you shake hands.
Oh yeah, no, but that's two parts, right? So
that's a finger grab.
I don't know
if guys are like, and you're like, oh god, let go of my fucking hand, man.
I don't know if you saw some of the footages of Trump and Trudeau shaking hands.
Oh, I know.
So Trump's a big man where what he does is when he shakes. When he goes off, he does a really aggressive handshake and basically tries to take. So Trudeau actually came in and pulled back, like he went deep into his hand.
Even though Trudeau's much smaller,
he beat up that one guy and the conservative senator, right?
Oh yeah, I guess. Well, Trump's a bully, right? That's what they.
Well, it's the alpha male thing, right? Like this is the handshake. Those people who grab your fingers. Now, sometimes you get your fingers grabbed because people. Like when you shake your hand, you're going in. You have to commit. Not this.
Fuck.
It's like you go in, and when you feel there, you keep pushing until basically your thumbs lock, and you're like, okay.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
And
I mean, not that we shake hands anymore.
No.
I mean,
we don't even fist bump. We elbow bump.
Somebody tried to elbow bump me. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop that. Stop that nonsense. Fucking shake hands and we'll sanitize after if we have to, but or do nothing.
Or do nothing.
Just nothing. We'll nod.
So there's a bunch of them, right? So there's the Boz, the fellow craft, the Boz, the fellow craft one, which is called the Shibboleth, Shibboleth, which is almost like the one you're saying. So it's more of a resting.
Oh. And
again, you're pressing so it seems a lot of these things you're pressing your thumb on knuckles. It's almost like that's how you signify to others.
See, and I don't see. I remember years ago, like people will meet each other and they do these handshakes and they don't know that the other person's a Freemason, and then they'll say stuff like, well, oh, hello, brother. You know, they know. And then, oh, okay. Well, what lodge are you from? Like they'll just know by the handshake.
And from the looks of it, it's because you're pushing on. Like they're the way they're shaking hands. They're doing it in a very odd way. Okay. Again, you're seeing thumbs being pressed on knuckles.
Yeah, and if a Mason knows you're not a Mason for sure, they probably don't do it for you.
Well, correct. Or maybe they do and hope you're ignorant, right? Like I think nowadays it's harder to get away. But if somebody grabbed your hand weirdly, would your first thought be, I think this guy's a Mason? Or would you say,
no,
this is not a date, buddy?
Yeah, like stop squeezing my fingers.
Why are you squeezing my fingers?
I hate that. I absolutely. Or the double shake where they grab you by the other, like with their other hand.
Yes.
It's like, would you stop? I know. Okay, stop it.
Or put
your hand over your hand. That's happened to me too.
Which is good which makes sense in some settings, right? Where
if it's someone who you know,
or they're very grateful.
Maybe perhaps
that's often a common thing. Oh, thank you so much, right?
Yeah.
And then you want to, if you put both hands on one of my hands, I got a free hand to slug you with. So probably not the best idea.
This is me punching you and kicking you in the balls shortly thereafter.
Why do all your handshakes result in somebody getting kicked in the nads?
I don't know. Only when they do weird shit. Don't do weird shit, okay?
Don't do weird shit.
Handshakes. They've been around forever. We're not Masons. Just fucking shake like a normal human being. Where do we go from here?
Okay, well, so I read about a Mason's word, and that's not like, hey, you have my word. No, it's more like, no,
it's a secret word.
It's a secret word. Not surprising. That was the one thing I couldn't find. Any ideas? Like, is it rock? Is it rock based?
I wonder if those things are private, right?
Or
it is a word. You don't even know if your handshakes are correct, right?
No, I've got pictures and said these are Mason handshakes, and it makes a degree of sense because again, the whole hey, you're pushing on the second level, so you're a fellow.
Wouldn't it be funny apprentice? Though if the Masons were like, they all think we have a secret handshake? Hey, isn't that hilarious?
Well, I'm sure they would have at one time. Now, whether they do or not, folks out there, you can't take stuff back from the internet. No matter how hard you try, something's out there. But what you can do is pollute the hell out of it. And maybe that's what they're doing with this. Maybe they're going off and they're circulating, So now there's a bunch of people like who watch this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, who now thinks they know how Masons do all their secrets. And
those two guys totally told me how Masons.
That's right. Yeah. From the internet.
Going around shaking people's hands. Fucking weird now. Don't do it. Shake hands properly. God damn it.
Don't shake hands. COVID, folks. Yeah. COVID.
Be a man. Shake hands properly.
I couldn't find too many of the rituals. So I found some things about the rituals investment, but again, not really anything cool.
Did you know Hitler hated Masons?
Yes, but he hated, in his defense, or in Mason's defense,
the Jews.
He hated the Jews. He hated the Catholics.
But he hated the Masons because he thought this is a fucking thing.
He thought they were.
He thought they were helping the Jews.
Okay, so when we get into conspiracies,
that's okay.
There's basically, hey, they're helping the Jews. No, they're against the Jews. No, wait, they hate the Muslims.
They are the Jews.
Wait, they hate Christianity. Wait, they are. They're the protocol of Zion. Like you start looking at some of the conspiracies, it's like, okay, they can't. Can they be all these things?
I'm an eager beaver here. I'm like, okay, yeah. Because
so rituals. Have you read? So you said you were talking about the Scottish.
Yeah.
Rite.
So there a lot of memorization of text to pass.
It's like a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of like learning different verse and different things. I could be wrong, but that's what that sounds like. That they're to get to the next level, you have to be proficient in whatever study that they do. It is a studying, as far as I know, and that was told to me by a Mason before many years ago, because he would study ridiculous amounts, like because he had to commit things to memory. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you have to like commit this and then speak it in front of like a bunch of people. Maybe our guest will shed some light on that too, because I mean,
so you're saying it's not like that episode of Simpsons where he has to do the ritual crossing the desert?
I don't believe so. Now they do have outfits. That's part of ritual, right? Is that they do have their outfits and they do have their badges of honor and
ceremonial stuff.
I don't know if they wear those other than like if it's just a regular meeting. They like to drink at their meetings, from what I hear. That money probably goes to charity. You have to buy your drinks. I would think
it's not an open bar.
I doubt it. If it was, I would love to join.
Okay, so let's touch on that. How do you become a Freemason?
So they're not supposed to ask you.
Correct. That's what I read. You can't be asked. Right. No, you are supposed to, anybody, you just have to ask to be a Freemason.
They can hint. They can hint to you. That is different. And I was at one time hinted to join. And because I did not have faith in a supreme being, which was when you do meet, and it's very social. I met with a couple guys, and one of them I knew quite well. And you know, they're like a sponsor though.
like Alcoholics Anonymous?
Well, let's just say that you don't work out, right? And I believe that wasn't told to me. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but like, let's just say that you sponsor me. You're a Mason and you sponsor me to become a Mason.
Folks, I'm not. Just so we're clear, I am not. I think I was like a cop. I'd have to tell you if I was, but I'm not.
Neither of us are Masons. However, but you know, and I thought it was kind of a neat idea. You know, being young, I was a young man at the time. I was in my early 20s.
Still a young man, Phil. You're only in your 40s.
Yeah. Well, I was a younger man, and I thought it was kind of cool. And I didn't know much about it. And I was being asked, and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And I met with a couple folks, and they just asked me some questions, you know, about how I looked at life, and do I believe in something bigger than myself, and like a God type idea. And I'm not. I'm an atheist or a non-believer. I don't know. Atheist is almost like you're a believer of something. But
okay, so atheist means you don't believe there is anything. Agnostic, I believe you don't believe in traditional in religion. So there are two different things, right? But you might believe in a supreme being or Cthulhu or the sun or whatever. But
no, I think we turn to dirt. That's fucking it. So enjoy your life, because
that's right. That gives you comfort. That gives you comfort.
It doesn't. I would love to have a religion. I think religion's great for people. I think it's important. I think
except when you're burning down buildings.
Okay, except for when it comes to but I do believe that, you know, it gives people some solace, you know, and it gives them some hope, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not a guy that goes, you're stupid for believing in that. That's not who I am, because I believe that it's important. And just like my kids, I don't influence my children. If they want to believe in something, I think that's important. But for myself, I don't have that luxury. You know, I can't wrap my head around it. Never have been able to. But I do not condemn anyone for having it, you know. Anyway, but so back to the reason when I was, you know, I wasn't asked, but I was encouraged to, and I was like, well, sure, let's check it out. But I did decline. Like they were going to decline me. There was no question. So,
but you didn't ask. Like you didn't ask, or did you ask to be a Mason? They were going to decline you, but you did.
I just asked to meet. This wasn't a formal.
But you didn't go off and say, "Okay, hey, can I be a Mason now?"
No, I didn't go to. No, I just knew this fellow. I worked actually in Huntsville, and he was actually pretty high up. He was like in 20th level, something or other, for the Scottish Rite. And they'll tell you their level, like they're proud of it. I mean, they've worked hard to achieve.
I think you can actually get like cufflinks. Like I seem to remember something where you can get like there's.
He had all sorts of stuff,
like in his house. You can get Mason bling.
Oh, but yeah, and like I, you know, saw his like regalia or whatever they call it. But yeah, they're proud of it. It's no different than doing anything else and learning. It's like
when you and I were 5-star Cubs.
Damn right. Got her picture in the pipe.
Tom Sheffield put his on the wrong shoulder.
Tom Sheffield should not have had 5 stars. That system's flawed. Anyway, yeah, but similar idea. You're proud of what you did, and why not have some form of reward? A lot of them wear rings. Some of them do. Some of them don't. But yeah,
I suspect that's how some of the income is generated too. That, for example, you can't buy your regalia from anywhere. You've got to buy it. So you got to buy your uniform from them.
I would think so. Yeah. And like you're also, you're not going to have somebody working, and you may have them. I don't know. Don't quote me, but I think most people are fairly set in their lives. And this individual was, you know, he was a paramedic, but he was like a chief paramedic at the time. Like he'd already worked most of his career. He had been part of the Masons for many, many years. I got to know him through my work. at the time, and he was like, you seem like a good person. And that was one of the biggest prerequisites. I'm like, oh boy, you've judged me wrong, Mister.
Yeah, I've known you for 40 some odd years. I wouldn't even say that.
I know. And I'm
good
like,
is not a word.
Sure?
Maybe I would not say you're evil person.
He more talked about how it could better myself. That was what, our discussion was. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Because you know what? I think what you're seeing is a lot of, it's like anything else right now, or in the last 20 years. You're seeing a huge decline in membership, right? Like if you look at Rotary, you look at the Lions, like they're all old, like there's not a lot of the Legion. I mean, yeah, but
no, there's still people in the military who've done conflicts,
for
but
sure
aren't necessarily joining up and becoming part of the Royal Canadian Legion. It's mostly the greatest generation kind of folks.
Yeah. And but that's what you're seeing now, like with the Lions Club, with all these charitable organizations, they're very old. They're dying out. They're not,
people are too busy playing World of Warcraft. They're joining guilds in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. So why be, join a club and for charities and stuff? People are really egocentrical. They don't.
But scouting suffered too. So scouting has suffered. I mean, they've got lots of other problems.
Yeah. Wow.
They've used scandals, but the fact is, those are all
the little boys. Okay, that's wrong.
We talked about language. You're going to get us an explicit quote here, Phil.
Well, I'm just saying, if you become a Boy Scout leader, so you can rail little children.
Do you remember Naked Gun, the Smell of Fear, the second one?
Probably.
Him and Priscilla Presley break up, and they meet in the Lonely Hearts.
I haven't had this much sex since I was a Boy Scout leader.
And
I was dating a lot at the time.
Oh God, Leslie Nielsen, such a comedic genius. I mean, I don't think he came up with it.
He was a straight man. Did you know that about him?
What, Leslie Nielsen?
He was a straight man for a long time. Like he was like a detective.
Oh no, okay. You're not saying like he wasn't gay. You're saying he was a straight man. Yeah,
I mean, he was. That's what they called actors that were like
correct. Like the Tim Conway, right? Tim Conway. I think Tim Conway was the one.
No, he was a comedian. He was Carol Burnett.
He was the comedian, but when he was with Carol Burnett, he was often the straight man, and she was the one trying to get him to. Because usually the straight man is the one who's.
Not Harvey Korman was the straight man.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe you're right.
One.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I remember seeing an airplane skit.
We just lost every person watching.
Anyway,
under 25.
We're digressing. Those
old fucks are talking about Carol Burnett.
Bringing it back.
Reel it in, Corey.
Okay, so we talked about origins of Freemasonry. Now, those are the boring origins.
Yeah.
So there are some more interesting origins, and there's two.
Hit me.
So
I want to hear them.
Okay, so we're going to do this because
I don't know a lot about this.
We're going to do the easy one first. The easy one first is, are you familiar with the Rosicrucians? Rosicrucians.
That's the easy one?
That's the easy one. Yeah, that's the easy origin.
Am I familiar?
At all? So apparently my mom, and she would have to comment on this, I believe she was a Rosicrucian knight. A Knight of the Rose. Yeah, I believe so.
A Knight of the Rose.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
There's actually a degree. It's like the Rose Cross degrees in Freemasonry. So Rosicrucianism, that's a word. Rosicrucian. I apologize, folks. I am totally maiming this. I'm
not sure I'll be able to find
this. This is a Northern Ontario education. You're lucky I can add.
Stop it. We had good educations.
We did okay. I don't think I could do school now, but yes. Yeah. So the Rosicrucians, okay, the Order of the Rose. So this swept Europe in the 17th century. So
the plague.
It was an Enlightenment period, right? So you had this idea, this spiritual enlightenment.
The Renaissance.
I think it was part of that, sure. Because you had this idea where people were more interested in the cult. They were missing the esoteric. So let's put things in perspective. So 17th century, Rosicrucianism.
Okay.
Big in Europe. 18th century, speculative Freemasonry starts up. And if you look in some of the stuff for Freemasonry, it actually has its origins, or it has links back to the Rosicrucians. So some of the elements.
So you mean modern day Freemasonry.
Modern day Freemason, not the original, not the operative one from the 14th century.
Yeah.
We're talking the one in the 18th century.
right,
may have drawn heavily on the road, and this is one of the links, right? And you can see this in some of their actual.
So they didn't disappear though, right? The
They
road,
didn't disappear, but
because your mom was one. So I mean,
sure, but I suspect the Freemasons ate the Rosicrucians' lunch. It's like, you know how the NDP hasn't disappeared, but the liberals basically say, okay, what non-crazy policies do you have? Okay, we're going to do those things. You know, bye-bye NDP, right?
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. What's the other one?
Okay, so that Rosicrucians was the easy one. So that was a simple like, hey, you know what? Yeah, they were sweeping Europe, and speculative Freemasonry actually drew concepts from it when they were putting together some of the rites and that. Knights Templar.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
Knights Templar, baby.
You love that stuff.
I am a big Knights Templar fan. Yeah. Big Knights Templar. Okay, so this gets a little bit. This is where we start going down rabbit holes here, folks. And if you look on our website, we have a very creepy rabbit in a top hat standing beside.
It's very frightening.
Go to our website, folks.
I tried to shoot it.
I tried to shoot it. He got the bullet.
He ate it.
Okay. So for those who don't know, there was an order of the Poor Knights of the Temple, I think is what the official designation of the Knights Templar was. Okay. Right. These are the guys who were originally supposed to protect pilgrims going to the Holy Land. That was the whole point. You've heard them terms monks of war. These were people who took similar Benedictine monastic vows. Right. But they threw on chainmail and that and cut people in half with swords.
Gotcha.
So you had
the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't protect that.
Okay, so this is where some of the things this is not an episode about Knights Templar, although that would be a cool episode in the future. However, this is the Temple of Solomon, one of the places they found like the Holy Grail, protecting the blood of Christ, the Ark of the Covenant, right? All the things. This is all the crazy things about the Knights Templar. Yeah, Knights Templar, right? But essentially they were a warrior order whose original sole purpose was to protect pilgrims going to the Holy Land. And they evolved into something much more. Bankers is what they evolved into.
Yeah, they turned into the really rich dudes that everyone hated.
Because the church, they had money, but it wasn't just that. So first off, yeah, you're right. They had all their men in arms. Like I think they owned like the Knights of Malta were an offshoot of the Templars, and they had the Isle of Malta at one point. Like that was a Templar holding. The church basically said, okay, well, we got our warrior order, so you guys don't have to pay taxes. Oh, right. Okay. Very good. Also, in Christianity, you were not allowed to lend money. This is why the Jewish banker became a trope, the Jewish moneylender, because you couldn't charge interest under Christianity. Like if you lent somebody money, you couldn't charge interest on it originally.
But the Jews are like, sure.
The Jewish faith has no restrictions on usury. I think it's the term is usury. Anyway, so the Templars got really big into that, and they would basically lend money out to a lot of, particularly one French king, King Philip.
Oh,
yeah.
Philip the Good.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he's known as, Philip the Kind. That's right. Philip the not going to execute you all because I don't want to pay back my loan.
No, right.
So the Templars do all these things, right? And they essentially have all these holdings, and they were a secret order. So they had secret rights, right? Which led them up to the point where the King of France decided to make his move. So he owed them a lot of money. He borrowed a lot of money. He was like, how can I not pay it back and get all their stuff?
You could kill them.
I could kill them. I could kill them. So you're looking at when the Templars fell.
Very effective of that.
Very effective. Okay, so this is where you see the October the 13th. 1303, I think, is what the official date was.
I don't know.
I'll give you the exact date of.
Was it a Friday?
It was a Friday the 13th. Yes.
Yeah. Not a good day.
Not a good day to be a Templar. Okay, 1 second here. Let's go off, and I got this somewhere here. Where is it? Where is it? I got my exact dates. Down here. Okay, so on October 13th, 1307.
Okay.
And famous date thought by some to have inspired the Friday the 13th superstition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm guessing it was a Friday because otherwise
Why would
we'd be hating
Thursday
Mondays
the
more.
13th?
Thursday, I guess, doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
Wouldn't have made a lot of movies.
So Prince Philip or King Philip basically put together, I believe it was Philip, put together the, okay, we're going to charge Templars with idolatry, basically worshiping false idols.
Oh, okay.
Right. This is where you hear the things that they worshipped a horned god called Bath.
Or Baal.
Not Baal, it was Baphomet, not Bahumat, but Bampot.
We'll spell it.
Yeah, we'll spell it. Yeah, exactly. So all across the land, pretty much all across Europe, not the UK, but all across Europe, pretty much the Templars were taken into custody.
Yeah, they were brutally murdered.
Yeah, I mean, well, they were
executed, right?
Well, no, they were tried as heretics, Phil,
through
the due process, and then brutally murdered.
Okay.
And burned at the stake. They confessed, Phil, after being tortured horrendously.
Well, when you're burnt, we're going to light your feet on fire. And if you say you are guilty, we will put out the fire.
We'll put out the fire and give you a good hanging.
A good, quick death.
So one of the linkages, there's a couple linkages here. So one of the thoughts is that the Templars took their vast treasure and fled to Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
So this would have been 13th century, right?
Oh, weird.
So 13th century and 14th century.
We have the Masons.
We have the Masons. No, they're operative Masons, but still.
Yeah, but they had time to kind of figure things out. They went underground.
Right. So there's a confession of a knight called Jean de Chalon. Now, he was tortured, but essentially what he was going on about was, what was it? One Templar, Jean de Chalon, who was alleged that some members of the order in Paris were given word of the crackdown and managed to slip away on ships to parts unknown. And the parts unknown is they went to Scotland.
Right. Makes sense. Okay.
So the linkages there is you've got two more linkages there. You've got the Lodge Mother Calinwinning, which is one of the oldest lodges in all of Scotland. It goes back to the 14th century.
Yeah.
And Rosalind Chapel.
Oh.
Did you hear about Rosalind Chapel? Did you read about Rosalind Chapel?
No, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah, Rosalind Chapel is it's 15th century, so it's a little bit like the timelines don't quite line up. But in the chapel, it's been associated with Masonic beliefs because of some of the imagery,
the symbolism. Yeah.
Yep. Also, Templars.
Oh, like they shared it.
So there are, if you look at, there is such a thing called Masonic Templarism. Is that what it's called?
Not sure.
What is it called?
To me, I always attributed the two together, and I think most people do. They go, Templars became Masons,
or joined the Mason, right? Like whether they joined them, like they brought their forces to them. And I read a fascinating book called Knights Templar in the New World, and it sort of focuses on that, right? The whole idea that they went to Scotland and Masons, right? So
but nobody knows for sure.
Well,
I mean, it's speculation, right?
It's speculative Masons. Yeah, exactly.
Speculative Masons. I once ate that in Italy.
Once ate that speculative Mason. Speckled Mason. Delicious.
Masons was delicious. Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, you have these guys. It makes total sense. You got the Templars. They're being fucking hunted down and killed.
They are screwed. They are so screwed. They're so screwed.
All your money gone. Everything's gone.
We're seizing everything we can get our hands on because not only do we not have to pay you, but we get more stuff.
So they go to Scotland and they go, well, we can't be like crusaders anymore. We can't wield swords to make a living. So what do? Well, maybe we become part of this fraternity of individuals and kind of amalgamate ourselves amongst them, and voila. And they're very, because at the time, I believe like they were really close. Like these are people that are, like the
the Temple of Solomon, right? So this is where some of the people draw the links. They say, well, Knights of the Temple of Solomon, Freemasons,
wait a minute,
building temples, building like the whole concepts of degrees. Like I don't know enough, honestly, about the secretive inner workings to see how many relations they are. Just some of the stuff I read shows that there are some linkages between Templars and Freemasons.
Right.
Like whether the Freemasons took the stuff and incorporated it into them, similar to what happened with the Rosicrucians, or whether or not the Templars joined and established, who knows?
Right. And there was a discrepancy though in time, right?
Oh, there was. So you're looking at, 13th century was when the Templars got crushed. Like that's where the fall of the Templar order.
Fled. So you got 100 years. 100 years is a long time.
And again, we're talking, I don't think the record keeping was great either, right? So a lot of this,
it's like COVID numbers, not great.
Right. So they say operative Masons showed up around the 1400s. Well, I got news for you. They were building castles long before them. You're telling me there wasn't something before, but they can only go back as far as 1400. So this is where,
or as far as written, what they can, it's hard to go back 700 years, right?
Well, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but we were building castles before then. So Masons existed before them. And I don't think they suddenly figured out in 14th century, we should organize.
Yeah, maybe we should get like a union or something.
Maybe we should get like a union. I'm tired
on this.
Jim got crushed by a rock the other day on an unsafe work site. We should.
That's right. Pierre lost a foot.
That's right. That's right. They talk French or Scottish.
Scottish. Yes. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And so that brings us to like, I don't know.
It depends on where we want to go. So we got two things we can go with. So I suggest before we get into the really the sexy one, it'll get destroyed when we talk to the actual Freemason.
Yeah.
Let's talk about famous Masons. So who's your favorite? Who's your favorite famous Mason?
Well, there's a bunch. I don't know if I have any favorites. But,
you must have a favorite.
The Bushes, birthday Masons. George W.
Well, let's see.
George Washington.
Washington was. I don't see George
John
W.
Hancock.
Yeah. So we had a lot of the founding fathers, not all of them, but a lot were.
Yeah. I think there's a ton. I don't know. There's a bunch.
Davy Crockett was a Mason. Believe that.
Was he real? Oh yeah, fought in the Alamo.
Yes.
Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash played Davy Crockett. Disney. I love that.
Oh God. You know what? So is that the original Alamo they did, which didn't show them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I bet you that's got a cultural sensitivity label on it right now.
Probably.
Did you know John Wayne was a Mason?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and Richard Pryor.
Wait a minute. Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor was a Freemason. So the guy who basically destroyed his life with drugs.
I was going to say he's not a great representation of.
No.
Yeah, his comedy was very vulgar. Hilarious.
Henry Ford.
Yeah, I knew that.
Right. And
who else was there? There was what's his name there? The guy that with the airplanes. Howard Hughes, wasn't he a Mason?
Let's see. I got a list now. This list is far from complete.
Yeah.
I don't have Howard Hughes, but I do have two others you'll probably get a chuckle out of.
Who?
One, the Wands from co-founder of Apple. He was a Freemason.
Oh yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
He still is. And our favorite Colonel,
Kentucky Fried Colonel
Harlan Sanders was
Colonel Sanders, who died poor.
Well, it's because he sold his stake and he tried to lightning in a bottle, and it turns out, funny story, he had sold his likeness, so he couldn't even use his own image to do his.
He looked like that. I saw pictures. I'm like, God damn, man. Ugh.
Just like John Wayne Gacy, little tie.
Oh yeah, call me the Colonel.
Okay, I'm trying to think of another good one. Amadeus Mozart, well, which is relevant because there's a conspiracy about Amadeus Mozart.
Yeah.
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was a Mason.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Yeah, well, there's so many famous people. I'm pretty sure the Bushes were both Freemasons.
I don't have it listed.
Or Skull and Bones, maybe. I'm getting
so Skull and Bones. So that was there's
maybe
another
New
one about
World Order is starting to fucking mess with my head here a little bit.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's actually they were Skull and Bones for sure.
Oh, okay.
Because digging through this, I find all that fascinating stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no. I mean, I don't know the exact number of how many Masons there are worldwide, but I would suspect it's quite high. And they're everywhere, every branch of the politics, every branch. Now there are certain places where you're not allowed to be a Freemason in government sections or security.
Well, it's because they're doing a lot of these government departments when they're handing out clearances.
That's right.
Are doing loyalty checks.
Yeah, I was in the UK. I read that.
If
especially.
you've sworn loyalty to an order, well, it's
Yeah.
like, wait a second, what if these two loyalties come at odds?
Yeah. And I think, I don't believe that Freemasons swear their first loyalty to the lodge. And that was
But there
told
must
to
be
me.
secrecy. There must be some secrecy elements.
There, oh, no question. I've never known a Freemason to tell secrets, but I've never really asked either. So, but no, I think that their first responsibility is their family. The second is, of course, their employment, and then thirdly, there's the lodge, and that's how it was explained to me.
Okay.
That the lodge is a third, but you were to help a Mason in need. So if you came to me and I didn't know you, but you needed my assistance, needed my help, then I'm obligated to help you because we are brothers, right? Which is kind of cool. I mean, it's a cool concept.
It's a cool concept. I'm curious in actual reality what that help takes form of, but yeah, it's nice to. Yeah,
I think
nice
so.
to have.
I think it's why people join the military. It's why they want that camaraderie. Why they become police officers. Why
they like to kill people in the case of the military.
Okay, well,
and if you watch the news now, apparently it's why they become cops too. But I disagree with that entirely.
Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe those are bad examples, but I mean, there is a camaraderie, right?
Sure.
That, a lot of, especially men, I mean, they seek this out.
Bikers. I think we're very tribal.
Back to bikers.
I think we're very tribal. I think by our nature, you look at the you look at the units that men. So men get married when people get married, for example. Often you'll have traditionally the wife stops a lot of her contacts, but the guy really struggles to do that with himself.
For sure. I mean, it does happen. I mean, that's his life, but I think camaraderie is important, and I think that for some men. I mean,
there are the dangerous loners. I mean. And that's it. But it's we don't bring down mastodons by doing it by ourselves. We bring down mastodons by working together.
Right. And to be a community, right? And a lot of times I think it's kind of a neat idea to have people that got your back. So I'm part of the Masons
that you might not know. That's the cool part is that you agree you're all part of this fraternity and you might not know them versus having an existing relationship.
And how it was described to me by this individual that I mentioned earlier about, kind of hinting about me joining, was that it's a great networking.
Yes.
It's a fantastic opportunity to network, not just in your own community, but you can be part of other communities.
And you get the work, jobs, contracts. So, that's where you start to get a little hazy when it's like, well, you did this because it's an excellent networking opportunity.
For sure.
That's why you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to say people aren't selfish and go, okay, well, this is a great way of advancing my career or advancing.
It's a secondary consideration versus the primary consideration.
But I mean, it's certainly at the top of most people's minds, I'm sure, is that, hey, because everyone's like that. Well, what can this do for me?
What can I get?
It's going to better you as a person. Yeah. Okay, great. But what else does this do? You want me to pay, but what do I get in return? It's always about what people get in return. It shouldn't be, but it is.
But it is.
And I think that, we can call it whatever we want. We don't really know. It's like the worst, best kept secret. Is that what they call it?
The worst kept secret society.
Yeah. But I mean, really, I don't really know much more about them.
So let's talk about the conspiracies. This is the stuff that gets really the juicy. This is hopefully you've stuck around this long. We maybe need to open with this at the start because this was we write your comments, folks, because this is the more interesting, crazy part of the story. Okay. So Phil, why don't do you know of any bizarre
Templar? I do.
Masonic conspiracies? Go first.
I do. Because you're gonna know more than I do. But
why do you always assume that?
You just do with this stuff. I've read, but I didn't get as far as you, I don't think. But that they're all lizard people. That's one of my fucking favorites. That they are actually lizard people trying to control the world.
So we better make sure the humidity and temperature are set properly for our guests then.
Yeah, right.
In the terrarium.
They're very cold-blooded individuals. Yeah. So anyway, they're lizard people. That an ancient, civilization of lizard people who disguise themselves as humans, who are like the New World Order trying to.
That sounds very much like the Cthulhu mythos. There's creatures in that are all lizardy,
like those subterranean lizardy things.
Hollow Earth folks.
This is a real thing. People believe that they're lizard people. So I'm going to ask our guest.
All right. Yeah. That's a good question to ask. So I'm going to let you ask that question. Okay. So we got the lizard question. I'm glad we got that one out of the way.
We're going to hide your face, but I want to see your eyes. Show me your fucking eyes.
That's right. Do your tongue. Do the tongue thing.
Do the tongue thing. Oh, no.
I got a dragonfly right here. Does it look tasty? Right. Okay. So.
Yeah. Next.
Okay. This one you're going to love. It's topical. It's topical on so many levels. So for those who don't know, episode 13 of the season 1 of the Order of Chaos podcast was Jack the Ripper.
Oh yeah.
As you know, Templars were destroyed on October 13th, which was probably a Friday, but we'd say the 13th. So 13th is an unlucky number.
Mm-hmm.
The conspiracy is Jack the Ripper was a Mason, and not just a Mason, a bunch of Masons.
Oh.
Yeah. Really? So okay. So basically,
I did read this, but I didn't understand it.
Yeah. So there's two ones. I'm not going to go into details, but essentially it's like, hey, the Queen of England's son, Prince Eddie, got somebody pregnant, and it's like, oh my God, we can't have this. So we need to get rid of her, but we can't kill her outright because it would and I think they're saying like Mary Kelly, I think they said was the one, but I can't remember.
Oh.
And they're like, okay, so
one of them was pregnant, right?
I think, I don't know. I don't think they did pregnancy tests unless you were really showing.
No, I think it had a baby. She had a baby in the womb or something.
I don't know. I don't. Anyway. I try a lot of the stuff for Jack. I sort of push aside, but in this case, basically, they did that whole idea. It's like where you've seen this in movies where, or not movies, I think TV shows where a bunch of people get killed and it looks like this random shooting, but really one of them was the target.
Oh, just everyone else.
And they killed the others to make it look like so you couldn't come up with a motive for why you killed it rather than just craziness.
Right.
So one of the theories is that Jack the Ripper was to keep the big scandal from happening, with a number of Masons went around killing these prostitutes so they can kill the person.
Why? Okay.
Okay. But it gets weird. So this is another thing to confirm with our guest. So
okay. We're asking a lot of this guest.
We are. So the other thing they start to link in is say, look at the oaths that the entered apprentice needs to take. So for those who don't remember, Jack the Ripper killed his victim by cutting their throat. There's some disemboweling. In one case, a heart was removed.
Intestines drilling over their shoulders. Yeah.
So, oath of an entered apprentice. Again, internet, so take it for what you will. All this I most solemnly, sincerely promise and swear with a firm and steadfast resolution to perform the same without any mental reservation or secret evasion of mind whatsoever. Bind myself under no penalty less than that of having my throat cut across, my tongue torn up by its roots, blah, blah, blah. Right? My throat cut across.
Really?
So that's for the apprentice. The oath of the fellowcraft. All this I solemnly promise and swear with a firm, blah, blah, without any hesitation, blah, blah, binding myself under no less penalty than having my breast torn open and my heart plucked out.
Jesus.
Okay, wait.
Oath
of the Master Mason. All this I most solemnly, sincerely promise and swear, blah, 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 of mine, whatever, binding myself under no less penalty than that of having my body severed in two, my bowels taken from thence and burned to ashes.
Jesus.
So when you look at the whole,
maybe this is why they don't blab.
Maybe again, I don't know how honestly these are, but so throat cut, Jack the Ripper cut throats. Heart take. He did apparently take at least the heart of one of his victims.
Yeah.
He was a big fan of disemboweling and placing them on I believe, the left shoulder. So
that's weird.
So if the whole idea of these victims weren't a bunch of Masons killing around, there's also the belief from these that, the Masonic traditions, the reason why Jack was doing what he's doing was because he was a Mason and he was.
That's possible.
Who knows? So that's the Jack
or a number of Masons.
Or a number of Masons, right? So this is, who knows? Okay.
Who knows?
Do you have another one, Phil?
I do, that they are Satan worshipers.
I heard this one.
Yeah. It's it goes back to this guy named Albert Peely or some odd thing, but that there some of the rituals were satanic. I don't know how anyone came to this conclusion other than, oh, they're secretive, they must be Satan worshippers. So yeah, that's that. That's all I got.
Well, this is the problem, right? So you go off and you have a secret order. It's hard to defend yourself. Saying, well, no, we don't do that. Well, what do you do? Well, I'm not telling you. It's a secret.
It's a secret. Well, you must be a Satan worshiper.
It must be. Well, I'm saying you're a Satan worshiper. And
do you drink blood?
Do you drink blood? Okay, so
sacrifice lambs.
How many more do you have, Phil?
They faked the moon landing.
Okay, we'll get to that one. Let me do mine first. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to go off. They killed Mozart.
Oh.
They poisoned Mozart. Now, apparently, this guy was riddled like he was. And the reason why he was killed, poisoned, despite being riddled with what they say, like syphilis, hepatitis, gonorrhea, like he was just absolutely, typhoid, smallpox, syphilis, and hepatitis.
Oh, just those.
Just those. And this would have been back in the day when
one of those should have killed him.
That's right. So apparently, he was revealing the secrets of the Masonic order in his symphony, an opera called The Magic Flute.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the imagery he was using, the notes, all this stuff was apparently super secret Mason stuff. And they realized they had to kill him to keep the secrets. Now, there's no support for this. Right? They're like, well, he had all these other problems, and the fact he was still alive.
He liked hookers and
he liked the lady. He did like the ladies.
Yes, he did.
He was a rock star. Okay, so go ahead to yours now, Phil.
Occult worshiping. Because
what about your moon landing one?
Oh, I do. Okay, I'll do.
Talk about your moon landing one. Come on, that's the cool one. That's
Freemasons faked the moon landing. I don't know why.
Well, aren't they all Masons? So what I'd heard about that was the head of NASA got promoted. He's like the grand poobah of Masonry, right? So because he successfully pulled it off, and all the astronauts were Masons.
Yeah. So here's what I read was that the Masons have been kind of doing the flat Earth, keeping flat Earth away from everybody for the last however long,
and the metric system down, at least from that episode of The Simpsons.
Oh, right. So they've infiltrated NASA, and so basically anything that's outer space related, we see an orb and not the flat Earth. Pretty exciting. I don't know. I don't know where it stemmed from. I mean, that's the problem with these.
That's the problem. They're pretty. They talk about shallow and deep conspiracies, right? Shallow conspiracies are like, hey.
Yeah,
sure, it happened, I guess, like, because who benefits? Okay, that's the shallow, that's the person, that's that's
even
who.
The Montauk, it like somebody explains why, but this is just whatever I read is it doesn't really have a good explanation. What do you got?
Washington as a whole. So the US American Revolution, the United States of America, big Masonic, basically the Masonic country. Right. So you see about the imagery at the Denver airport. You see it, some of the imagery used on, and actually funny enough, so you know how you said they worship Satan? So there's a statue of George Washington that's down in the Smithsonian that was originally not. It's George Washington shirtless, and he's doing like this. And he's pointing down. It's real. No, it's real. It's real.
I've seen the picture. I thought it was just Photoshop.
Okay. And there's a picture of Baphomet where doing the exact same thing. So shirtless devil, horns, dressed basically like George Washington, sans the head, doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's fucking weird.
Right. And so if you go through Washington, like you got Masonic, and if you ever, a good movie, have you ever seen National Treasure?
I did.
I really enjoyed National Treasure. I have a weakness for Nick Cage movies, no matter how bad they are.
I know. I do too, in a way. I think it's since, what was that movie where he was a criminal? What was that?
You have to narrow it down. Oh, The Rock. So, I think Leaving Las Vegas was his big one.
Oh, was it?
But I really liked him in The Sorcerer's Apprentice too. So the whole idea is that the United States is basically one big Masonic conspiracy, and the founding fathers, like most presidents at one point were. And Masons. It's funny. Yeah, and you'll get to the point where they talk about some of the symbols, right? We didn't get into this, but there's like hand signals you can do, and you see them amongst world leaders, and yeah,
Really?
yeah. I stopped because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get on a watch
go down
list.
that rabbit hole.
No, I wasn't. No, I stopped. Phil,
I'm gonna do it.
On to you, buddy.
Freemasons are basically a front for the Jews to take over the world. So yeah, that was one of the things. So that basically that Masons are actually, not just helping the Jews, but they're actually a Jewish sect that, is here for world domination.
The Zionist conspiracy. It's good to tie it into that. Let's blame the Jews for everything, right?
It's no matter what we look at, the poor Jews are they're just constantly berated into
history's whipping boy. Honestly,
it's like, okay, why are the Jews always the end all be all for every one of these hateful, conspiracies? It's kind of crazy. But anyway, yeah. So it kind of goes back to like the Knights Templar fighting, against.
They were more against the Muslims,
Islam,
so that they were more against Islam, right? Which is, I think, some of the other conspiracies talk about. Now, Christianity, apparently, the Catholic Church to this day considers Freemasonry to be dangerous.
Yeah, there's a lot of anti-Mason groups.
There were anti-Mason parties at one point.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
So let's talk about this. So, okay, a fellow by the name of William Morgan. Did you read him? No. Did you read anything about him?
No.
This was the fellow who basically infiltrated the Masonic Lodge. Mm-hmm. Okay, he infiltrated the Masonic Lodge and and he had a buddy who ran a newspaper. So this was set in 1826. So
did he disappear?
So he was gonna go public with his buddy because his buddy's paper was struggling. He's like, hey, you know what? Let's get their secrets and we'll, reveal them. Yeah, right. Yeah. So the scandal sheet, the original scandal sheet. Oh. So this guy winds up getting put in jail for borrowing a shirt and not returning it.
No, that'll happen.
Gets bailed out, goes back in jail for owing $2.68.
Hey, that's a lot of money back then.
Then gets bailed out by three Masons.
Oh.
This and disappears.
Sound good. That disappears forever.
And then disappears. Now the three Masons, who nothing really happened, they went on trial and they basically said, well, you gave him $500 for him to disappear to Canada.
Really?
Yeah, that was William Morgan, and his buddy's printing presses got burned down by a bunch of drunk Masons.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. So that's where you talk about the whole idea of,
Yeah, that's weird. It's so
Islands
weird.
Dissenters.
Yeah. Apparently, JFK was murdered by the Masons.
Really? Is that's
that was one of that I read.
Yeah, but who hasn't murdered JFK?
Everybody's murdered JFK. Yeah. I did not know that one. I'd never heard that one before.
So how about this? How about this one? Okay. So this is these are my last two. Okay. They're kind of related because they got Italians in them.
Oh, Jesus. Of course they do.
So this is Albert Pike, 3 World Wars.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Albert Pike was a Confederate general who was a Mason.
Right.
Okay. He had corresponded with an extremist leader in Italy called Giuseppe Mazzini. And he predicted the coming of 3 world wars that would be necessary for the world to accept a unified world under Lucifer.
What?
Yeah. The link to Masonic is because this guy was a Mason. So therefore, if he's predicting this, and he was like, okay, basically said, it can only be described, Pike announced the First World War would overthrow the monarchies and create a fortress of atheistic communism. The Second World War would then pin the fascists against the Zionists before the Third World War would oppose Islam against the Zionists. Once those 3 wars were conducted, Lucifer would rise up to rule the world. And the only reason this is linked in is because Pike was a Mason. So,
okay.
And I guess he was.
Oh, well, I don't really see.
Well, it's the lizard people one, right? Like seriously, it's about as much credit.
Lizard. I mean, it's the most plausible of all of them.
It's the most plausible.
9/11 was part of the hidden war between Masons and Islam.
Okay. Yeah, I remember reading about that. Like, and again, this comes back to the whole idea that Masons are in charge of the U.S. government. Like that.
Yeah. So it's a holy war that's been raging on since the 14th century, basically. So there are entire books dedicated to this theory that the Knights Templar that amalgamated, like you said, became Masons, and then they
continued their battle against.
This battle has continued sort of quietly, as good versus evil, and depends what side you're on. You're either good or you're evil. It's so much.
I wonder if there's any Muslims who are Masons, because if they like, when you think about the traditional regular Masonry, it's you believe in a higher power. I do.
Why not?
Right. Yeah. So
I don't know. That's a good question.
So my last one. This is my last one.
Okay.
It's the P2 Masonic Lodge in Italy. And this was the one that was the Roberto Cavalli was known as God's banker. So this was the guy who was handling a lot of the Vatican's money, and he winds up hanging from a bridge mysteriously.
Weird.
So this lodge was raided by the police because it essentially was using to mob activity. It was very dirty, very, very, very.
Was it
dirty.
A regular one or a continental?
They don't say. They just say P2 Masonic Lodge. So
okay.
Right, and so 900 members of the P2 Lodge, including several high-ranking government official members of the Italian Parliament. Okay, so Civelio Bilcosi was apparently on this list. It was linked to Operation Gladio, where Gelli operated with British and American agencies to organize a series of terrorist attacks designed to stop the rise of communism in Italy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and they're basically saying, well, okay, the Masons were behind this. Well, okay, a lodge. So this is one of the problems.
But it came out of a lodge. I mean,
it came out of a lodge.
People that are Masons, that maybe he did his books there. It was comfy couch. My favorite scotch.
Exactly. Right. So was it Masons, or was it a Masonic conspiracy, or was it Masons doing bad things?
It's no wonder that if you're a Mason, you listen or read any of this, you go, that's some crazy shit. That's funny.
We're getting our asses kicked again. Great. Recruitment just dropped another 200,000. Great.
I don't think they want anyone who believes any of these things, to be honest with you. But there is an interesting history that we don't know about. I mean,
well, hopefully we'll know about next week.
Well, we'll know some. I don't expect that he'll tell us his secrets, but he may shed some light on a lot of the things that we did talk about and some of the history,
well, that's what I'm hoping for, right? Because a lot of this stuff, it's this is several hours of internet research, pulling things together. Folks, go to our website, orderchaos.ca.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Well,
we just hit 800 subs.
You can't like and subscribe on the website, but it's got links to everything.
That's
okay.
Right.
And it's also got my notes in there. So if you want to know, for example, how the Masonic cipher worked, it's going to be in my notes. I didn't touch on this, but their secret society, of course, they've got a cipher.
Why wouldn't they?
It's actually in the FBI archives, believe it or not.
Really? Mm-hmm. So that is very interesting stuff. See, and this is the thing.
It's interesting for me because I'm a bit of a crypto guy. I don't think it'd be super interesting to you.
I do like that stuff. I enjoy.
I will. You check my notes. You can put pictures in it.
I will. I do read your notes.
You do not read my notes.
I do.
You steal my pictures from my notes.
I don't always steal pictures from notes, but sometimes I do. But yeah, so I'm interested to see where this leads us for next week. Mm-hmm.
Again, so if you have questions that you want us to ask our special guest.
Yes, he is a Mason. He is.
Now, Phil has vetted he's a Mason. So this isn't a case of some rando talking to us. This is somebody Phil knows to be a Mason.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is definitely an individual who we have to keep his identity private.
I'm so relying on you to do that, Phil. So if you screw up, it'll be like one of those moments where he moves into the blurry.
There's his face. Hi.
I mean, and mind you, I get like we've got not a lot of subscribers on the YouTube, so maybe
but it's not about that. It's about how many will we have in the future. Right?
True.
We're at 132, 800 subscribers on Instagram. as of today. Hit the old 800. Thank you very much for
It's
liking.
not even a round number. It's like 1,000, 100, 1,000. We're not
like
celebrating because we hit. Did we say you'd wear a tiara at some time? Didn't we say that? Didn't we say if we hit a certain number? Remember we talked about, or did that get
within a week?
And,
yeah, no. See, but maybe you'll wear a tiara when we hit 200 subscribers.
I'll wear. I tell you what, if we
hit wear a tiara on Sunday,
if we hit 200 subscribers,
yeah,
I will do the next podcast in a plague doctor's mask.
What? What the fuck?
Google it, Phil.
Oh, like I don't know if I want to. Do I have to hide my identity when I Google it?
Phil, you should always. So, FYI, you should always use incognito over a VPN.
Oh, always. Oh, I never.
If you don't want your browsing associated with you, incognito is not usually sufficient. It helps, but
my browsing is quite boring. Other than for this podcast, I was
gonna say that's okay. That's what I'm getting at, Phil. My browsing is generally pretty boring too. Yeah. Until I'm doing the podcast, and it's like VPN on.
Yeah. My wife's like, you know, you're googling a lot of weird shit.
Like, and then you start getting ads for weird stuff. Welcome to Rise of the Machines, folks. Episode
the Machines.
Was it 5 or 4 now?
I don't know.
So many. Isn't it great that we've had so many episodes? I can't even remember what the numbers are.
I think Rise of the Machine is 4.
NWO is 3.
That's right. Yeah, but we're on this is season 2, episode 1, right?
This is episode 2. This is 2.
Episode 2.
Simpsons.
Oh yeah, Simpsons. I'm losing track. That's how far we are. Isn't it crazy?
Thankfully, we don't track the Wednesday rants.
That's right. All right. So next week we have part 2 to the Freemasons with our special Freemason guest. And so thank you very much for watching. I'm your host, Phil, and my co-host, Corey, and we will be here next week. So send us your questions.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. All right, folks. Have a great night.
Take care.
Bye now.